In many ways, it was the perfect week for the Minnesota Wild. They go 3-0, they make a bunch of moves during the trade deadline week, and they look pretty darn good against the Calgary Flames. We recap all of that and preview the week ahead today on Locked On Wild.
You're Locked On Wild, your daily podcast on the Minnesota Wild. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's happening, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Locked On Wild, your daily Minnesota Wild podcast, part of the Locked On Sports Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks, as always, for making Locked On Wild your first listen each and every day. Just a reminder, you can find Locked On Wild on all of your favorite podcast platforms, absolutely free of charge. On today's episode of Locked On Wild, we talk about the new additions for the Minnesota Wild, looking pretty good so far in their first few games with the team. We'll recap a perfect week, preview a busy week ahead, and much more. My name is Seth Topal, your daily Minnesota Wild insider, and joining us for another Victory Micheletti Monday is Alex Micheletti, and it was a perfect week, Alex, in a lot of ways. Trade deadline, very active, got a second-round pick for Jordan Greenway, and the team looked pretty good throughout the week and then kind of kicked it into a different gear once all the moves were made.
Yeah, everything's worked out for Bill Guerin again. He said he was going to be active. He might have, said that we're not going to do anything, like he told his wife, and then, and then he had a full day of trades, and he got the last trade to go through on trade deadline too, getting John Klingberg. So it was like icing on the cake there. This team. You just never know what you're going to get week to week. It's just, 1 week it looks like, the sky is falling. And then the next, they're pushing their way to be the number one team in the Central, So it's, watch out the rest of the division here. It's full go ahead, trying to secure that playoff spot officially.
And it's funny because I remember us talking about the Tanner Jeannot trade and how it's like, boy, if that's going to be the going rate for a trade that could help you out, I don't know if we necessarily want to get involved. And then Guerin makes 5 trades and gets a second-round pick for Jordan Greenway, but also finds ways to add veterans to the lineup without mortgaging future assets. Couple of the trades that he did use the picks that he got for being a broker for other deals. And so you look at what he was able to add without using any first-round picks, without using any major prospects. The prospects that were traded away were guys that weren't going to re-sign here. I mean, it's hard to really do all the things that Guerin did while also bringing in a high pick in return. I thought he did a really good job with the deadline, considering all these different parameters and not straying from them throughout the week.
Yeah, it's worked out so far so good, and that I said it on Twitter too. The Greenway trade, I mean, it came at the perfect time too, because it cleared, that $3 million, and, they can use it for other assets that they're going to have to re-sign, or, there might be some more trades this summer, Kalen Addison might be done here as well. With the trade for Klingberg, it looks like, Mr. Addison's not going to be joining the lineup anytime soon unless they decide to rotate, but it seems like Klingberg is kind of his direct replacement for the end of the season here and going into the playoffs. So yeah, it's going to be very active summer, even though people don't think it is. It truly is. So yeah, it'll be fascinating to see what's next.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see how this team approaches a lot of different things. But you look at the Jordan Greenway trade
Mhm.
and the money that frees up. Michael Russo had thrown out earlier in the week. Somebody had asked what the number might be for Philip Gustafson for an annual value in an extension. He said 2.8. So if you want to look at a direct effect of being able to move Greenway and having Buffalo take the whole contract without retaining anything, probably going to end up leading to Philip Gustafson being re-signed. And so really nothing short of a huge win in that department.
Yeah, it's huge. And, Jordan Greenway was a second round pick too. So you're basically getting that back and, in a deep draft. I mean, let Judd Brackett go to work, and, it's nice to have one of the top evaluators in the league too, who assembled the top prospect pool in the league according to the Athletic. So it's going to be fun to see what they can use with those two picks that they got for Mr. Greenway. And there's lots of other important decisions. We mentioned Addison's name, getting Gus re-signed, figure out if they want to bring back Freddie Gaudreau. It's and we'll see if Fleury Fleury retires. Do you have Wallstead be the backup, or do you bring in another veteran? So lots of fun decisions to discuss coming.
I would be remiss if I didn't mention, as president of his fan club, Brandon Duhaim's going to need a new contract.
Mm-hmm.
We'll talk about him in a little bit, but I did want to finish this first segment just asking, with Marcus Johansson and John Klingberg, who we've seen so far, the expectation is that we'll see Oskar Sundqvist this week. He had some travel issues that prevented him from getting from Detroit to Calgary. So, and then you've of course got Gustav Nyquist, who is going to be a guy that hopefully gets into the lineup before the season is over. Who do you think has had the better debut so far? We've seen 2 games for Johansson. We saw Klingberg come in against the Flames. Ironically, was a +3. Which player has had the bigger impact so far of the 2?
Yeah, I mean, Johansson, they didn't score in his debut, but they had some good scoring opportunities, and then they they get it going, versus Calgary, and I think that really had a effect on Boldy's game, because then he ended up scoring later. Finally, it took a month, so yeah, it was nice to see. The thing with Johansson is, can it be consistent? So we'll see if if it can continue. He at least has familiarity with this team and a lot of the players that were on it in his first stint. So hopefully he can keep it going. I think ideally they want Nyquist to fill that spot when he's healthy. So he's a good placeholder, and then you can move Johansson. He's kind of a player where you can play him on any of the lines, really. Yeah. So that's the good thing about him too, is his versatility. He has some size, and he can skate pretty well for a big dude. And he's just got to stay healthy. And yeah, I think he had a really big effect, on that Calgary game. And Klingberg, he looked really good with John Merrill. Everybody was really concerned about his defensive measures or stats. But I think we have to take into effect that he was playing on an awful Anaheim team. It's the same thing with Gustafson when he was with Ottawa. Ottawa's defense has improved, obviously, with the moves they've made recently, but it's nowhere near the defensive system that the Wild run, and so they can protect his minutes, and so far so good off the one game for Klingberg when you're +3. So
yeah, it really worked out well for both of those guys. I was impressed really after kind of downplaying the Johansson acquisition. I think he's looked really good over the 2 games that he's played. Now, as you hit it right on the head, it's about keeping it going and being consistent. But should have probably gotten the goal, but then it went to Joel Eriksson Ek, and then Matt Boldy scored one too. So 2 goals for that line. Can't ask for any more than that. And an opportunity to essentially douse any hope that the Flames have for the postseason coming up here this week, and a couple of other big games as well. And so we will both take a look back, take a look forward as well as we continue today's episode of Locked On Wilds after this. Our next partner is a product I use on a everyday basis. I started taking AG1 because it helps you simplify your vitamin and supplement routine. All you need is 1 delicious scoop of AG1, and you're absorbing 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food sourced superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens to help you start your day right. Best of all, it's lifestyle friendly. Whether you eat keto, paleo, vegan, dairy-free, or gluten-free, AG1 is a small micro habit with big benefits. It's one thing you can do every single day to take great care of yourself. Right now, it's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition. It's just 1 scoop in a cup of water every day. That's it. No need for a million different pills and supplements to help you look out for your health. To make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/NHL Network. Again, that's athleticgreens.com/NHL Network to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. Continuing today's episode of Locked On Wild, once again, thank you for making Locked On Wild your first listen each and every day. We had a banger of a week for the trade deadline, just a ton of listens, and so appreciate everybody taking the time to tune in every day and making Locked On Wild your first choice with all of the Minnesota Wild news and notes throughout the season. Seth Topol joined by Alex Micheletti for today's Micheletti Monday. And let's take a look at the upcoming schedule for the Wild here this week. Calgary, Tuesday night, then at Winnipeg. So a rare back-to-back for the Minnesota Wild. And for like the 90th time this year, the Flames will be on the second night of a back-to-back. And so the Wild have avoided a ton of back-to-backs this year while playing teams that essentially are always on the back end, which is just the most bizarre scheduling quirk that I think is possible. And so you go Tuesday hosting Calgary, Wednesday at Winnipeg, Saturday at San Jose, Sunday at Arizona. So an opportunity to really both put one team away to create some distance in the case of Winnipeg, and then a couple of games back-to-back on the West Coast against teams you should beat.
Yeah, I mean, you should win 3 out of the 4 at least. Arizona just is an awful team. San Jose, I mean, Capo gave up 8 goals, the other day. They left him in, just I have no idea what that team is. They have no hope unless they get Bedard or Fantilli. And if they don't, then it's just, they're stuck because they have, veterans on long-term deals that they seem to can't get, rid of, Erik Karlsson, Couture, Hurdle, all those guys. So yeah, that's tough. And Calgary, they just seem like, that the Wild sucked the life out of them, the other night. And then Winnipeg, who knows with Winnipeg, they're just all over the place. They had a back-to-back against Edmonton, and the first night they get, clobbered, and then they went a crazy game the next day, 7-5. You just never know what you're going to get with that team. They can score a ton of goals. They have a Norris candidate and Josh Morrissey, who had 2 the other night. So yeah, it should be an intense game. That rivalry continues to grow with Winnipeg, and yeah, we'll see what happens. But I think if you can get 3 out of 4, that's a home run of a week.
The Jets have 3 wins in their last 10 games, 2 wins in their last 9, and the losses are just hideous. I mean, 3-1 loss to Columbus back on the 16th, 4-2 loss to the Devils, not bad. Then beat the Rangers, but then lost 2-1 to the Islanders, 5-1 to the Avs, 4-0 to the Islanders, 6-5 in a shootout to the Kings, then 6-3 to the Oilers, and then that 7-5 win over Edmonton. And they're falling behind like as soon as the puck is dropped in a lot of these games, and so they're having to dig out of deficits. But that just goes to show you that it's taking Connor Hellebuyck a little while to get settled in here over the last, I don't know, ever.
Yeah, I mean, you take a look at Winnipeg and Dallas. They're relying so much on their goaltending to get them through, and I think both of them might be getting tired out here. Just they're having to do so much in that, and look at Hellebuyck. He had to play both games back to back because they don't trust Rittich as their backup. I mean, it's of course no one does. So it makes you don't want to exert your goalie, especially with the playoffs coming up. And look at Colorado; they lost to Seattle last night, and they had to use Georgiev again because they don't have a backup either. So it's tough tough out there for these teams, and you have to keep your goalie healthy because if not, good luck trying to get far in the playoffs. And the playoffs seem it's like a war of attrition. You just hope to be more healthier than the other team. It doesn't even matter sometimes how well you're playing. It's just health. If you, especially when it comes to goalie, the most important position in the game.
Yeah, and you bring up a great point about the Calgary Flames, and I noticed that and mentioned it in the post game. Man, those fans were booing loudly to the point that Daryl Sutter after the game was like, "I'd boo too." And it really seems like that team is in a situation where the vibes are just completely dead. They looked lifeless for the most part against the Wild, and that was on the road, a place that the Wild have struggled all time. And now they're going to flip around and they're going to come to the XL Energy Center, a place that is going to allow the Wild to dictate lines.
Yeah. I mean, you look at that team, they made that giant trade to get Huberdeau in and Uyghur, and it really hasn't worked out. Huberdeau has 12 goals. That's, for the amount of money that he's, making, that just is, it's not working with Daryl Sutter. And, they signed Kadri too, and he's really underperformed. Now, I don't know if I don't think his talent's gone down. It's just the system is not, great for, offensive minded guys like that, that want to be free flowing and, high intensity, high attack. And, I don't think, they can go with him long-term as head coach there. Otherwise you're going to have agents demanding trades. Alan Walsh, is just all over Twitter after every Flames loss. And, you got to just take advantage of a team that's in chaos right now. And they also aren't getting the goaltending. Now, there was goalies available. They could have, like Vegas got quick there. And I'm just shocked that, they didn't attempt to get a goalie anywhere. Because Markstrom, he's fighting it really hard, and Vladar is nothing special as the backup. So, yeah, they that lost to the Wild the other night. That pretty much daggered their hopes because they're so far behind still, and Colorado has games in hand too.
They are, if I have it correct, they're behind Nashville, who sold at the deadline. That's how bad things are going for Calgary, and their record in one goal games, I think, is 13, 12, and 12, which is hideous. I'm looking at Arizona's schedule. Did they put something in the punch bowl for the schedule makers? Because listen to this. Starting on March 22nd, the Coyotes play at Edmonton, then at Colorado, then they host Colorado, then they host Edmonton, and then they finish the season playing 3 of their final 5 games against Seattle.
That makes no sense. I don't know if there's, that's gonna be really good for them with Connor Bedard in their, and they're right in front of them. But they continue to play teams weirdly. Like last night they played, New Jersey, and they took New Jersey to overtime, and then they basically let New Jersey win like immediately in overtime. They remembered what they're playing for.
A month ago today, they beat the Wild 3-2 at home. So don't take them lightly. But
right.
Yeah, the schedule is just, I don't get it.
The back-to-back, just what is going on with that?
Just bizarre.
Take advantage, I guess, right?
That's all you can do. We'll finish today's show by just talking some more trade deadline. I want to look at the Western Conference and some of the moves that we saw. We've got a complimentary episode coming out later today with Johnny Lazarus of a few different outlets, Bleacher Report, Open Ice, and he's also host of the Blue Crew podcast to talk more Eastern Conference. We'll finish talking Western Conference here to finish today's episode of Locked on Wild after this. Are you looking for a delicious treat but don't want all the fat and calories? Well, you have got to give Built Bar a try. What makes Built Bar so good? Well, for starters, they're covered in 100% real chocolate. That's right, real chocolate. They also come in some unbelievable flavors like churro, peanut butter brownie, and coconut almond. I don't know how Built Bar keeps doing it, but these bars are so healthy for you. They contain just 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, and a whopping 17 grams of protein. Best of all is you no longer need to wait to grab yourself a box. You can head to your local Walmart or Sam's Club to pick up a box of Built Bars today. If you don't have one handy, you can always head to Built.com. But either way, make sure you get your hands on some amazing Built Bars and get your snacking started today. Final segment of today's episode of Locked on Wild. Once again, thanks for making Locked on Wild your first listen each and every day. Seth Topal and Alex Micheletti rounding things out here today, talking about the Western Conference. Now, a lot of moves, to say the least, having players head to the Eastern Conference, but there were a couple of other moves made. Dallas with a couple of depth moves, including Max Domi. I did go down the rabbit hole because no shock here, was banging the drum for Max Domi quite loudly, and just was not really sure as to why the Wild didn't really give him a bigger look to potentially fill that second line spot. He gets penalized a ton, and his defensive metrics are not good. And so I answered my own question. I did homework and figured out why. And so if Marcus Johansson continues to provide some speed on that line, I'm all right with that. But I do have to say, of all the places for Domi to go, Dallas just had to be the Dallas Stars.
Yeah, the the one place we did not need him to go to. But that's the national for you. I mean, you're gonna have to deal with these teams at some point. If you play them in the first round or advance to the second round, you're gonna run into them eventually. So bring it on, right? And so. Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I'm super excited. I'm really looking forward to Oskar Sundqvist too, because he can play a little center. See if he can can help the center position with the Wild. Here, and he's won a Stanley Cup in the past, so he knows what it takes to win. So I'm so far so good with the additions that have played already. And hoping to see Oskar, bring the same mentality coming to the Wild here.
Yeah, and he's a physical guy, a sandpaper kind of guy, and so you figure he would, you figure he'd fit naturally with Marcus Foligno, and Freddie Gaudreau can play wing. And then I think what you do for that fourth line is Brandon Duhaime, Connor Dewar, and Ryan Reeves. And you have a lineup that has guys on every line that just make things difficult for you, whether it be Joel Eriksson Ek, whether it be Ryan Hartman, whether it be Brandon Duhaime, Marcus Foligno. And, with Foligno too, I had wondered what was going on with him recently, and then it turns out that he has been battling an injury or two, gets a day off, looks much better against the Flames. And so keeping guys healthy, having the depth to do it, keeping guys healthy is going to be huge for this team down the stretch as we get close to the playoffs. I think Money Puck had the Wild's odds of a postseason spot at 92% the last time I looked. So it's looking likely that postseason will happen. And so make sure everybody's healthy and ready to rock once we get there.
Yeah, I mean, if you brought up a good point. You can maybe rotate in some guys here near the end of the regular season once you know for sure that you're going to be in the playoffs securely, and rest a guy like Jonas Brodin, which they're kind of doing right now. And we saw what how well it worked with Marcus Foligno coming out and then coming back in. And so, yeah, you have that luxury when you have the depth, as Anson Carter would call it. And yeah, so it'll be interesting here.
I did want to ask about Jonathan Quick. You mentioned he went to the Vegas Golden Knights after the Los Angeles Kings sent him out the door, really with no advance warning whatsoever. And so I guess that leads me to push for the standings to stay as they are for Seattle to get the number 1 seed so that we can get a first round series that includes the Vegas Golden Knights and the Los Angeles Kings.
Yeah, that would be the most ideal. They seem to play really well against the Kings, and then Vegas. I just think it's a good matchup for them. Different. It's a different Vegas team than what they've played in the past, and so I think going up against those Pacific teams would be a lot more ideal for sure.
Kings sweep and Quick gets a shutout in every game. That'd be something, but
right,
that won't happen.
No.
But, if anything, I just would like for the Kings this year to have as chaotic of a postseason run as they had last year, where it just every game was just absolutely bonkers, and then they end up losing. It's like, well, you had fun at least. Maybe you did.
Yeah, I don't know. That was tough for them. But now that they have Fiala too, who's just been having an amazing year, we'll see if he's if he's on the milk carton again for the playoffs. I hope for his sake that his legacy is just not regular season come to the playoffs and then just disappears every year.
Happy to be here.
Right. Yep. Exactly. So this is this is a huge year for his his legacy as a player. And we'll see if he can get it done or not.
The funny thing too, just to wrap up, is that as we look at this postseason picture, and you look at the number of teams that just tapped out at the deadline, and Calgary being essentially the only team that really didn't, but they only made minor upgrades at the deadline and now even have fallen further behind than they currently were. And so you look at it with the Wild in second in the Central, and save the Winnipeg Jets or I guess Nashville, it's hard to find a team at this point that could catch and push the Wild out of the playoff picture, because Nashville is 6 points back, 10 points back at the Wild, I beg your pardon. They sold at the deadline. Calgary minorly bought, they're 11 points back. Then St. Louis has 59 points. They very much sold, and they have gone into the tank again. And so beyond one or two teams that'll probably fall more out of it as the season goes along, there really isn't anybody else that is fighting for a playoff spot. It's mostly just like the Eastern Conference, just trying to figure out who slots in where.
Yeah, I mean, like we've talked about in this episode. I mean, what a difference a couple weeks makes, right? We all thought that no chance of playoffs for the Wild, and then a couple weeks later they're pushing to be in first in the Central. And yeah, just trying to be consistent, stay healthy, and try to help Kirill Kaprizov. He can't do it all himself. It was nice to see against Calgary the other night, where he had his first off game in a while and didn't get a single point, and they still scored 3 5-on-5 goals, which it's a miracle, right? And so it was nice to see that depth show up. Nice to see Boldy get on the score sheet. He's been pushing to get there. So yeah, just huge, and to get scoring from different lines other than the top line there.
I have a feeling that's going to be a massive goal for him, and so I was super happy to see it, as we all were. But then you break Foligno's goal drought, you break Boldy's goal drought, and it looked really good. They looked really good against the Flames, and so just keep that going and keep those points rolling in. To get to 100 points, the Wild need 22 in the final 19 games. So you do the math there. You win 11 of those 19, which, I mean, even if you win 5 of them and go to overtime in 6 games, whatever the math ends up being, I definitely did not get the math right there. But anyway, 22 points to get to 100 in the final 19 games. And I got to feel like that is very doable for this team, considering who they got left. But we'll wait and see what happens. And that, I think, will do it for today's episode. So now that your first listen is done, make sure that you stick around for our second episode of the day, where we're talking Eastern Conference trade deadline recap with Johnny Lazarus of the Blue Crew and Bleacher Report Open Ice. So make sure to keep an ear out for that. Make sure you follow along wherever you listen to your podcast, whether it be YouTube or any of your favorite podcast platforms. Also, make sure to follow us on social media as the Locked On Wild Name Madness Tournament continues. Keep an eye out for the winners so far being posted today as well. All that and more as part of what we have to offer at Locked On Wild. So follow along and enjoy. We've got new episodes every Monday through Friday as part of the Locked On Sports Podcast Network.